And that's where my cohort comes in, is you join AmeriCorps, you're with age group peers or not, just peers who are going through the same things as you and learning the same things you're learning and doing the same type of work. I ended up connecting with 2 girls in my cohort, and we weren't all that close when we were going through Summer Institute, but they saw that I was in need and they had an extra room and they needed help paying their rent, and we became like sisters. It was a miracle. Yeah, it was just a huge blessing that I could not have anticipated. But those relationships, I still every now and then will hear from one of them, and it's so wonderful to see where they've gone. One of them's still teaching, the other is doing social work, and she's just made for that. She's so kind and loving, and just I've made such incredible friendships and relationships through Teach for America. It was an amazing time. I think that something that comes up a lot in the space of a service year, but also the programs that are benefiting and the organizations that are benefiting from AmeriCorps members, is just sustainability. And that's something that the executive director of one of my programs mentioned to me in the first couple months that I was on this job, is just how do we create spaces that are sustainable for the people who want to do that work. And it is really challenging in education post-pandemic. I taught before, during, and after the pandemic, and it's really, there's so much need right now. And I served at a school that also had a city year program. It was one of these joint schools where there's a middle school, elementary school, high school, all in one. There's a city year program at the high school. And I just have to say, we had a social worker at our school who worked for the whole network. She had 1,000 children on her caseload, and it was not possible for her to meet every single child's needs. She did everything she could, and she's remarkable for everything she did. But the fact that there were programs like City Year in the building and able to meet the kids when they needed somebody and create programming for the kids, every child, every student deserves to feel like they're being supported and their talents are being recognized. I really feel like the education programs under AmeriCorps that provide any kind of services to kids, whether it's nutritional or sports or just whatever a child wants to engage in, I feel like that is to some extent just as valuable as people who serve in teaching. It's just, it creates a whole different sector for kids to have an outlet and express themselves. And I saw a lot of remarkable things happening thanks to education programs. I just was not confident that I knew what was next. And I do feel like on a very personal level, like AmeriCorps really just came in clutch for me. And
made it back with another AmeriCorps alum on the AmeriCorps, where are we? The AmeriCorps Connections podcast. What are we doing today? I'm Nicki Fiocco, and I am the brainchild behind the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And it's really based off of my experience as an AmeriCorps member and my desire to stay connected with AmeriCorps alums across the country and actually out of the country. We have 1.3 million AmeriCorps members who've gone through a year of service or a term of service, and like, where the heck is everybody now? So that is really the purpose of this podcast, is just to continue to have conversations with AmeriCorps members, learn about what they're up to, and find out if there's any resources that we can share amongst each other, job opportunities, professional development opportunities, anything. We have a special series that's happening right now, and it's the 2024 Recruitment Extravaganza. And this has been a marathon of interviewing up to 4 AmeriCorps alum every week for the past 4 weeks. That's right. Casey's what?
it's a lot.
Yeah. Yes, it's 4 a week. Thank you so much for the Do Good, Be Good, Sharon Tewksbury Bloom's team for helping me with some of the editing on the back end. So that's a partnership we developed at the beginning of 2024. So really appreciate the editing and marketing of this podcast. It's really helping it to grow. And if you've listened to this and you find the content valuable, please subscribe to it on YouTube, because that'll help us monetize the channel and grow, and then also download and like it onto all the podcasts. And if you are listening to it on a podcast platform, thank you, Dan Medevere from Time or Money Services, who was the first one and CCC alum to step up and just say, you got some cool content. Let me help you get this on all of the platforms. And really, he doesn't have a desire to get on the podcast. He just likes to support it from the back end. He helps me with some of the little things that pop up. So thank you all for your support, and thank you for those that are continuing to listen. But again, we are having this special recruitment extravaganza. So for those folks that don't know, right now is a really important recruitment time for AmeriCorps programs across the country. And there's probably hundreds of thousands of AmeriCorps programs throughout the whole country. And go back to listen to all of the episodes on this special series. But today we're here with Casey Vincelette.
You got it.
Vincelette, yes,
Yep.
from the New York State Service Commission, otherwise known as the New York State Commission and National Service, but it didn't fit on the Zoom label, so we just said New York State Service Commission. And for those of you that are new to the commission world, every state has a state service commission, including Puerto Rico, Guam, and Washington, D.C. South Dakota is the only place that does not have a state service commission. And basically, and Casey can speak more to this, but commissions really distribute about 95% of the AmeriCorps funding through the national agency right into their states and their regions. And it's really based on the idea that the state knows where those funds need to go as opposed to the federal government. And Stacey can talk about how you can hone in on some of the programs and some of the needs around the state. But before we get started, Casey, let's talk about your service year. You're a Teach for America member and you actually did go on teaching, but how did you find the AmeriCorps opportunity?
Yeah, so I graduated, or I was in my senior year, and I was just not confident in what was next for me. And it was a very scary feeling. I was working with my career development office, and I did 6 internships in my undergrad. I worked 3 jobs, and I still got to the end of my undergraduate experience and was not sure what was next. But the nice thing about AmeriCorps programs, and especially Teach for America, is that there is always a need somewhere in the country that can be filled by anyone who's willing to serve and wants to share their time and talents. So I ended up connecting with a recruiter on my campus for Teach for America, and she really helped me through the process of applying and selecting where I want to serve, what age group. I said high school or elementary school, but not middle school, and they put me in middle school, but I rolled with the punches. And
Wow, good for
yeah,
you.
and it turns out middle schoolers are amazing and so creative and fun and smart, and I had a great experience. It was challenging, but it was really fun. And then I ended up moving out to Chicago, and I got to the end of my senior year. I left behind my home state of New York and moved out to Chicago with one big suitcase of everything I thought I'd need. And it was not everything I needed, but thank goodness
for Target.
Goodwill. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Goodwill, yes.
Goodwill, Target, whatever I could get my hands on. I ended up moving out. And the way Teach for America works is they put you through Summer Institute. You do very intensive training to try and get you day one ready for the school year. I really was not super confident in my ability. And it was showing in interviews. So I was one of the last people in my cohort to be selected. And as often goes, I was selected by one of the highest needs schools who just needed to get bodies in the building. Unfortunately, 2 months after the start of the school year, I was laid off from that position. They had under enrollment. They were not getting the funding that they had anticipated. And that was terrifying. I just didn't know. I'm on the south side of Chicago, but no longer working there. I didn't know what I was going to do. But the nice thing about AmeriCorps programs is that you have that mentorship, you have that support, that if something falls through, they're going to find you what's next. So I was able to work with the people administering the program out in Chicago, and they found me another placement school. A lot of the times there's some shuffling at the beginning of a school year as teachers find different positions or situations change. And I was able to start with a different charter school that it was just so different from the place I came from. And it felt so exciting and such a relief to be there after I was going through so much uncertainty. And then at that time, I also didn't know where I was going to live. I started out working on the south side, then my new placement school is on the west side. And that's a far distance, especially if you don't have a car. So getting there, I had to find a new apartment. And that's where my cohort comes in, is you join AmeriCorps, you're with age group peers or not, just peers who are going through the same things as you and learning the same things you're learning and doing the same type of work. I ended up connecting with 2 girls in my cohort, and we weren't all that close, when we were going through Summer Institute, but they saw that I was in need and they had an extra room and they needed help paying their rent. And we became like sisters. It was just, it
Oh,
was a miracle. Yeah, it was just a huge blessing that I could not have anticipated. But those relationships, I still every now and then will hear from one of them, and it's so wonderful to see where they've gone. One of them's still teaching, the other
oh wow.
is doing social work, and she's just made for that. She's so kind and loving, and just I made such incredible friendships and relationships through Teach for America. It was an amazing time.
So cool. And it sounds like you had such a great experience with Teach for America. And you said for 6 years, is that right?
I taught for 5 years, five
Okay.
complete school years,
Yeah.
yeah, with all things considered. And it was a whirlwind transformation from day one till when I was leaving that
And
summer.
you did it through the pandemic too. So you're like, okay, I have my bearings. And they're like, just kidding.
Nah, yeah, I remember being in the middle of that school year. It was March, and I was actually interviewing at different schools at the time, and I traveled home to New York to do an interview with a New York school, and then suddenly school was canceled. So I extended my stay in New York, and then suddenly we're not going back to school this year. And I'm calling kids and checking on whether they have Wi-Fi access to food. It just completely changed the nature of what we were doing that year. And
Yes.
data was no longer, it was just safety and survival was it was the benchmark. It was no longer data or test scores or anything like that. And then during the pandemic, that was its own thing. That was calling kids and making sure that they're awake and able to sign on and making sure they're safe. After the trauma that kids had been through was showing up every day, and they were so resilient and so strong, and they had been through so much, and it showed, and I gained a whole new respect for young people and what they're able to endure, survive, and overcome. It's just remarkable to see some of I would do Zoom classes with some sixth graders in a little elective and just check in with them. I ended up teaching them eighth grade, and they had been through so much, but they were so strong and smart
Mm,
and knew all kinds of survival skills because of it. It was really
wow.
something. Yeah.
That's amazing to take that. Everybody had their own experience, right? And wow, good on you for being able to navigate through that. So after you finished teaching, where did you go after that?
I ended up ready to move home. My grandparents weren't doing so well. I just felt like there were a lot of factors that were leading me to go back home to New York. And I wondered what was next for myself. That's another thing about AmeriCorps is you join and you're not sure whether what you're about to do for a year or for 2 years or for 3 years is exactly what you want to do for the rest of your life. But you have that freedom, you have that flexibility to say, I'm going to try this for now. I'm going to learn all
Hmm.
kinds of workforce skills and life skills, and then I'm going to apply that to whatever I see next as my next opportunity. I actually ended up with the Service Commission in New York State
Okay.
because they sifted through a stack of 150 resumes looking for an AmeriCorps alum, and they chose mine as the only AmeriCorps alumna in the whole
Oh
stack.
wow. Oh
Yeah, I
wow.
was
That's
so
crazy.
lucky. I got
Yes.
so lucky. But really it is like a well-kept secret. Is not everyone knows about the opportunities, which is
Yeah.
why I love going to career fairs, love doing recruitment stuff because people will come up and be like, "What is this? I have no
What is
idea
this?
this existed." Yeah.
Yeah. And AmeriCorps, like the network, is such a niche. So if you
Uh-huh.
know anything about AmeriCorps, you can really slide into any program.
Yes.
If you know the word e-grants, be
Yeah.
careful because you will be a program manager or you
Oh
will be,
goodness,
a
yes.
program. Don't say the word compliance around anybody or you'll be put on the grants.
Oh yeah.
Um, but that's one of the things that I in 2022 I was just trying to figure things out for myself. I was down in South Carolina working at their commission, loved the people I worked with, loved the programs.
Mhm.
It wasn't Maryland, and that this is where my network was. So I just was like,
Right.
you know what, I need to go back. And
Yeah.
it felt really good coming back. But in between those times, I really was like, I really want to lean into the AmeriCorps network. Like
Hmm.
we are such a special niche. And I think that anything that you want to do. If you want to be a program director, you can do that. If you want to get into recruitment, you can do that. If you want to consult, you can do that. There's so many opportunities. And if you have any talent, or you understand, not even talent, but if you're interested and you understand the world of national service, there's a place for you to stay in there. And I remember talking to I think it was the president or provost of University of Baltimore with one of my commissioners. And he said, when we're looking at fundraising, we want to keep people in our hug. And I feel like
Mm,
that's what national service does. It just keeps you
yeah.
in the hug. Oh, you want to try something new? Cool, but we're here for you. And so I
Yeah.
love that. So you had landed at the State Service Commission. And what year was that?
This is my first full year that I'm completing right now.
Oh,
That
wow.
was this
Okay.
past year I started. And since I've joined, it's almost like a reflection of the programs where when you start employment with an AmeriCorps program or an organization that hosts an AmeriCorps program, you might end up doing any kind of thing that contributes to the sustainability of a whole organization. You might be doing capacity building, you might be doing recruitment, you might be doing grant making, depending on your program. It allows you the flexibility to find what is your strongest suit. So I came on board because they're like, oh, she's young, she can do social media stuff. But now I end up going to more like fairs and talking to people in
Mm-hmm.
person, and I love that. And everything we do is so collaborative, and we all check out the projects each other are working on. So this whole like last year, I've been able to go to conferences and tons of visits to the city, and just it's constantly something different on the horizon. And that's how these things work. Is it is about connections, it is about building partnerships, and you get to meet people, or you get to go out and dig in the dirt and do community
Yes.
service to beautify the space. It's just there's something for everybody depending on what you feel like doing and it's what's calling you and what's available to work. Oh,
It's
it's
so cool.
amazing. Yeah.
Oh, go
Sorry, go
ahead.
on. Well, it's
No,
just
I
that
was,
you sorry.
you go.
You're there with volunteers who want to be there, who aren't even
Yeah.
necessarily getting paid. That's an amazing concept, is that you take people who want to do community service and national service and you pay them. And people deserve to be paid for the things they want to do and are good at doing. It's no longer just a go out there and give out of the goodness of your heart. It's you are wonderful. You are helping so many people and you deserve this allowance, absolutely. And we're going to give it to you.
Yes, 100%. So tell us let's move into a little bit of the recruitment so we make sure we get plenty of time. How many grantees does the State Service Commission, or how many programs do you support?
We have a massive portfolio. We have 37 programs.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Folks, that's a
And
lot.
yes,
South
it's very
Carolina, I think
busy.
we had 10.
Yeah, it's a very busy. I think California is comparable. I think Texas is comparable, but it's just the size of the population, the size of the state.
Yes.
And it's a huge range. We do have a lot of education programs, which I love, love, love working with education programs. But then one of my programs in my portfolio is the Environmental Justice Corps. And they're a brand new program working in Buffalo, New York to help mitigate flood conditions by
Mm.
working in drainage basins that have the highest need. They recruit from the communities where the people are living and also are underemployed, and they give people the opportunity to go work in their community to make sure that there aren't going to be floods and that drinking water is safe. And they also have this partnership with the Buffalo Sewer Authority where they have these ambitious goals of a certain percentage of each cohort is going to be hired
Oh,
to,
wow.
yeah, going into this lucrative career after their term of service. And it's taking every part of what makes a great AmeriCorps program and putting it together. It's
Cool.
so community informed. It's tied to everything going on in Buffalo, which is a beautiful area and has so many great programs, not even necessarily AmeriCorps programs. And it's just, I feel so lucky that I get to talk to the people who do this program too, because they're the sweetest people in the whole world. That's the cool thing about working for the commission, is I get to see the results of all these programs across the state and know how much is happening to help
Mhm.
people. It just really fills your cup.
Absolutely. How many members are they recruiting for?
It depends on the program. So we have a
That
chicane,
particular Buffalo
that
one.
one, the EJC.
Yeah.
That one, they just asked me for an expansion. So they're doing even more than they did last year. I want to say it was 15 plus this
Mm,
past year. And each year they recruit
getting
more and
bigger.
more from the community, and they just have made headlines. They've been featured on AmeriCorps Nationals, like social media and stuff. They're like,
Nice.
I'm so proud of them.
That's, and then what are some other programs that you are, and what's the timeline? I know some of them are like they're not all on the same recruitment, but
Yeah.
in general.
So because it's my first year, I have just three of our wonderful programs in my portfolio, but my two others are both education programs. They do summer activities for kids in New York City, and I just was at, we had our member service summit, and one of my programs, the Center for Family Life, had the most incredible activity that they planned for all New York State members, where they
What?
just had us. It was so fun. It was just icebreaker activities, but really fun, engaging icebreaker activities. And I just got to see that this is what they do with their kids when they come to them after school, when they come to them during summers. And it's so fun to be an adult in the position where you're getting those services.
Yeah,
I never appreciated it enough when I was young, but now I'm like, this is so awesome. Just
that's so
networking.
great.
Yeah.
So you focus on recruiting three programs, but somebody else in the organization, or you guys divvy it up. That makes sense. What did you say, 30 programs? That's insane.
30, 37. Oh yeah, closer to 40.
Oh, so how
Um,
many AmeriCorps members do you have? You've got to have
we have
thousands.
thousands, yes.
Yeah.
We have a lot. And really, it all comes back to just when I do my recruitment efforts, I'm recruiting for AmeriCorps generally. And then I also
Mhm.
like to throw in there, hey, if you want to travel, you can travel. I joined AmeriCorps and traveled across the country because
Right.
that's what I wanted to do at that time. It's just there are so many opportunities. And I think back to where I was when I was meeting with my recruiter, and I do feel like that changed the trajectory of my life. Like I don't know
Hmm.
what I would have just graduated with no direction really if I
Yeah.
hadn't made that connection. So when I'm out there like tabling recruiting, I'm super passionate about what I'm peddling because I do feel like it can be just this amazing starting point for people. Or I talk to a lot of folks who are 55 plus, or maybe they're at a career fair because they want to find their next opportunity.
Yep.
It it's just great for anybody who's looking for a transition, for like, how do I start fresh with a
Yeah.
different kind of work?
People that listen to this podcast know my story probably. I went back to school when I was in my early 30s and I served as an AmeriCorps member in my mid 30s. And I really did not start my career until I was like 36 years old. And it was right after my AmeriCorps year. And it was like one thing after
Mhm.
another. And then the next thing I'm in the governor's office in Maryland. And I'm like,
Wow.
how did that happen 8 years later? I don't even like, so it definitely captures you.
Mhm.
And if you just let yourself go downstream and go with the flow and let those opportunities, like you mentioned, like they wanted me to teach science, they wanted me to teach these things that was not necessarily qualified for just yet,
Yeah,
but
no.
I did it knowing that the support was there. I did things during my service year and actually even during my employment. I remember when I was director of Volunteer Maryland, and somebody asked me for my budget, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, where is that? What is the? They were like, it's an e-grants. I'm like, who's e-grants?
Oh
Like, what is
gosh.
this? What? And then, I was able to do those things, and it definitely is a place where, and oh my gosh, can you just say like the commission network across the nation is amazing. I could reach out
Incredible.
to anybody, any director, and be like,
Hmm.
literally, my mentor handed me her budget. She just plug and play. And I was like, bro, this is amazing.
That
Um,
really is.
we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's not a lack mindset. Like you said, of course, I want people to serve in the programs in New York, but if they're from North Carolina and they want to go home, let me introduce you to the North Carolina Commission and
Yep.
all of their programs down there. And
Hmm.
it's so easy because I did sales for the first kind of part of my life. It was gym, so it was easy to sell gym memberships. Oh, I don't know. Be healthy.
Yeah.
That's great. Like I can sell national service like it's nobody's business because it's such an easy thing to talk about and convince
Yes.
people that like number one, this is a worthwhile thing to invest in, and it's also a worthwhile thing to participate in. So
Yes.
stepping off
Absolutely.
my soapbox now. Is there anything else that you want to mention about the New York State Service Commission and also any opportunities? Like, what's the best way for folks to get in touch since you're recruiting for certain amount of programs, but they might be interested in, let me see the whole portfolio.
If you want to see the AmeriCorps New York programs that we have available on our website, newyorkersvolunteer.gov, we
Okay.
have a program directory. I'm in the process of trying to revamp the website a little bit, so it'll be new and interesting to look at coming soon, but it's a work in progress. It does have all of the information. It does have
Okay.
all of our programs, but it'll be prettier very soon.
And are you guys, so state service commissions are in different departments. Some of them are in governor's offices, lieutenant governors, first ladies. Where is the state service commission in New York housed?
We're actually located within the Office of Children and Family Services.
Okay.
So that's been really interesting for forging partnerships, especially for
Yeah.
second chance youth. I was recently with a coworker tabling at a career fair within a juvenile foster care like center, not just a foster home, but a SEO family of services home for children who were in the foster system. And that was remarkable. There were so many bright young people like looking for what's next. They were so excited and just so much potential in that room. And it just, we get these opportunities because of our partnership with OC, and it's a beautiful thing. We have this great home
Yeah.
base that we are tied to, but we're also federal, so we have our own
Yeah.
system thing going on. But it's a good setup. I like it.
It's nice to have that relationship with the state. I think it's important to be, and even that like kind of fluctuation if somebody's, I don't want to serve in America or I want a job, but
Yeah,
well, you know what, or I want to volunteer, whatever.
yeah.
Um, Casey, this has been absolutely amazing. And again, during this whole series, every single program that I've been listening to, I'm like, I wish I could do that. So,
Yeah, I
I mean,
know.
the one in Buffalo sounds amazing, and I've driven through Buffalo, but I haven't necessarily stopped there. It is beautiful. And is there any last kind of thoughts or anything that you want our viewers to know, our listeners to know before we wrap up?
I think that just it's cliche within the AmeriCorps world, but we always say anyone can serve. I really did not see the trajectory that my career has taken when I was graduating. I was English and communication, super general. I just was not confident that I knew what was next. And I do feel like on a very personal level, like AmeriCorps really just came in clutch for me and made things happen. And it just it doesn't, it's not like you're going to find, oh, that's the perfect job for me when you go search AmeriCorps. You're going to find something that's, I think I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, and you you take the time and you learn to do it and you keep showing up every day and just you don't know what's next. It's opens doors, it's meets new communities. It's just it's a really beautiful experience that you can give yourself, and it's 1 year of just growing and learning and figuring out what's next for you.
That's great. I think that's going to be the quote on the thumbnail. AmeriCorps came in clutch for me. That's
That'll
great.
do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Casey. This was wonderful. And thank you all for sticking around and listening to the end. And if you're interested, we'll have all of the links to connect with Casey and to connect with the New York State Service Commission on Community National Service. And that's it. We'll be back next time with another AmeriCorps alum and probably wrapping up our series of recruitment. Take care. Have a good one.